far from good outcome. And of course, the issue of economic management during his tenure was something that is also yet to be highlighted when it comes to the situation that was already there, the environment that was left behind by Kenyatta. And as Moi took over, the economy was quite favorable at that time. But by the time he left office, things were bad. There was pervasive corruption, mismanagement of public resources. Then you talk about the golden bag scam.
Wow.
That set the country way back.
Totally, totally. Zainab, I mean, that's an amazing economic history that we've just learned there.
Right.
And the beauty about it, and this is something, you know, I've gone, you know, I've just gone on it so many times.
Why did you miss?
To realize that we had a very great economy.
Right.
Where coffee, agriculture, back then actually was truly realized as the backbone of this country. We made very good returns for the nation. Zainab, it just goes on to show you that things went south immediately after we started derailing our focus from agriculture now entering into these other matters. I've always wondered, is it that we did not have the experience back then, or is it because of corruption? Corruption is a key ingredient that has actually been counted as what made us or what led to our economic downfall. And you can see it. You know, statistics are there. And you can see the revolution, how we came down from a country that was doing very well in matters of agriculture to where we are today. And necessarily, when you look around the issues economically of the 80s and the 90s, it just told you there was rampant corruption. We moved from coffee and tea being the things to today, whereby diaspora remittance are the ones that are number one income earners in the country, you know, instead of things like agriculture or manufacturing. So it shows you there was a downward spiral that, and it gives credence to the fact that there was a situation that we did not arrest. Whether it was the dream team that the former head of public service, Leakey, brought that did not work, whether it is the governance structures back then that did not work, whether it's because we did not have the economic safety nets that we talk about. There are so many things which I believe led to the downfall of our economy. Key among them, and I'll repeat this probably on every broadcast, and I've repeated this before, was the fact that we did not have systems in place to arrest these situations. A great system is the one that tells you that you are not doing well, that you need to change your economic course so that you can have a proper trajectory. Our economy was growing by 7.4 or 7.6%, and this year we've gone to 5. All indicators should be, why have we? And what are we going to do to ensure that we are back to the trajectory? I think that is what was not followed steadily. And so we started going south, and it became, you know, everybody was dipping their hand in the cookie jar.
Would you
with
say,
fully well knowing that there was no system in place to check on...
With the same issue of no system or lack of system in place, would you say it is within his tenure that the culture of corruption flourished?
It did flourish. It did flourish, and I'll tell you why. There was a time Moi said, and I know he said it as a banter, there was a time the late president said, mimi nilikuwa dereva. Lakini nyuma kulikuwa na pickpockets, wakora, you know? And that's why that program, the person who put that program said it very well. Moi had great intentions. If the people who were assisting him run government were to come to him with great ideas, would he turn them down? Was he advised accordingly by the people he trusted? Was he being told the truth? economically, or was he one of those people who are just pacified and told everything is okay? Did he have the economic knowledge, one that Kibaki had? Because when Kibaki came in, our economic changed. And Zainab, this has got nothing to do with Moi as a person. It is the people who probably surrounded him that did not have that vision of creating that grand economy.
But look, we say the back stops at you.
The back does, but the people you put in office could actually not possess the kind of knowledge that is required to turn around a country economically. So you may mean well, Zainab, bringing somebody who you think, you know, can be able to turn it around. We've seen even in our times. Did we not just have our Treasury CS and PS fired? Were they not knowledgeable people? Were they advising the head of state properly? Would you have said? You know? And if the president is not an economist himself, probably he will never have found out. But the reports that you get, you must be able to interpret them and realize, where are we going as a country? Are we doing better?
All right.
And you know, if we are not doing better, you need to know which places you need to push and which places you need to change and effect systems that are able to bring about solutions that will ensure you're back to a track where you are making progress economically. So I think there were so many things, but combined with everything, I think there was that element of not knowing or trusting people who, you know, got into office for their own personal gains. We had finance ministers back then. We had governors in central bank back then. We remember cases where money was being printed in the central bank, you know, and our economy was actually performing dismally. So you would ask, who are advising the head of state back then?
All right, so we saw a dwindling of the economy beginning that time, and of course that affected the economy to this point.
True.
We're still reeling from that. And maybe just moving away from that, something that has also come to the fore is, you know, we've had politicians during the Moi era who served then faulting President Uhuru Kenyatta now for what they say is his style of leadership, saying he's allowing politicians to go to the podium and disrespecting the presidency, disrespecting him as a president, and saying, you know, that's not how President, you know, Daniel Moi would have, he ruled with an iron fist.
I think if we look at things from that perspective, I think we are going to lose it. We have to realize back when Moi, when the late President Moi was Moi, let me put that word, there was discipline within the ranks of government and governance. There was code discipline. Moi understood, and probably coming from being a farm teacher, teaching back then was all about instilling discipline. And so Moi was very firm when it came to discipline. When President Uhuru came in, the environment or the platform was very different. There are things that he himself has continued doing. For instance, allowing access, the public to access probably places and situations where back in Moi's days would not, somebody could not access. You have seen the president causing up to young artisans, to people to come and see how the government operates. The State House, they are sitting in his chair, in his boardroom there, you know.
So
he
what you're saying is
up.
The democratic space has changed.
Yes, and it's in that way because our environment democratically has also changed. Would you have expected a singer like Bahati, what we saw him do in Kasarani, would you have expected that during Moi's days? No. Where you know, this guy pulls the president from his seat and goes on to sit there. Those are things probably you never, I mean, places like the State House were sacred, you know, but that was the governance structure then. Today, the democratic space has, you know, has opened up to places and scenarios and situations that have, purported to be different than the way things were back then. So it is a little bit off for anybody to try and compare these two environments. Back then, I mean, discipline was the order of the things. But again, it is also for the current president to be mindful of the sanctity of the office, such that people don't also take it lightly or don't come and start disrespecting that space, but him as a person, President Uhuru, he means well, just like Moi did, he means well. So the people who would mess up that environment are those who don't understand that his well-being and him meaning well should be respected. And so he, as a person, may have a very clean heart in doing things. But then it is for us, even the politicians, to understand that there is a limit for them, even with that goodwill.
And even when it comes to governance, something that we cannot avoid to mention was some of the events that took place that blighted his legacy. That is Daniel Moi's legacy, and that was the assassination of Foreign Affairs Minister Robert Ouko in 1990. And of course, his image at home and abroad was quite tainted because of that. And this murder remains one of the most, unsolved, high-profile killings during his tenure, and the politics that surrounded Moi's reign.
Well, the politics, first of all, Zainab, I think the reason why I believe Moi actually got a very negative slack with Ouko's murder is because it was believed back then Moi had the instruments of the state instruments of knowing, of information and intelligence. Nothing was said to go past him, intelligence or information. When Moi needed intelligence, he would get it crisp. So people have tried to wade into this murky situation to understand why did he not get intelligence, A, or B, did he know and feigned ignorance? Like I told you, it's an African to even talk bad about the dead. But these are some of the things that are going to be with us historically for the long time. Books have been written. Witnesses that were there, most of them, have died. As time went by, facts have eroded. As, again, time went by, there has been spins into what really happened. But the fact remains that this, as you've said, becomes and continues to be one of the unsolved crimes that we owed mostly to the family of Ouko. And it was just sad that the late Ouko, even the widow, after the late widow, after all those years of seeking justice, she never got to know really what or how the husband died. And it is as tragic and as unfortunate as they come. But Zainab, like I told you, these are things that we must embrace as part of our history. And we must keep looking at the back burner for us never to go back there. And I'm not talking about the death of somebody who is famous or somebody who is known or somebody who is big in public office. No, I'm talking about the death of every Kenyan. We need to be having this constant conversation that the deaths at which we can or we are able to ensure that don't happen. We are today talking about deaths of children, and it's not only today. There has been so many deaths within our learning and academic institutions. What do we learn from them? I'm reminded of, and this is a very good example to give, I'm reminded of a discipline in aviation, whereby in every crash, a team sits down and they look at and investigate that particular accident. And they go back to the drawing boards and see what caused. And they take precise measures to ensure that another aircraft does not go down with the same mistake. All right? That means it is research back to the drawing boards, where all planes are told, guys, you have a weakness in this area. Can you change it immediately? And it's effected. That is the kind of precision we should sometimes work with some of the things that we are seeing happening into our schools and our children.
Indeed.
Otherwise, Zainab, I think we are going to be meeting and having these discussions back to back without a serious solution in sight.
All right, and look at it this way, Gabriel. Even after Moi left power back in 2002, power did not leave him. No. In his Kabarak home, the retired president not only played host to a number of politicians who went to seek, and a lot of dignitaries went to seek, advice and his opinion on succession politics. That is something very interesting we'd like to touch on. And I know NTV's Silas Apollo has that report. Let's just take a look, then we can converse about that a little bit.
The changing tide in Kenya's political landscape saw KANU swept out of power in the 2002 election, relegating Kenya's then strongman to the periphery of national politics.
Those who have followed events since the introduction of the multi-partyism to Kenya cannot oversight the fact that the economy of Kenya literally was affected.
When he landed at his Kabarak home after a short flight from State House, Nairobi, Moi began life outside power.
I thank the entire members of the civil service, armed forces, for their support.
For many in the country, the exit of Moi was a prayer answered. Not only did it bring his iron fist leadership to an end, but also came with a more democratic political space.
People who are working under him were already fed up and wanted to move into another direction. I particularly feel that he managed his succession very poorly. He could have succeeded with his decision had he managed it well. But he took it upon himself, decided himself without consulting other people. And therefore, when he decided to announce it, what he got was a reaction instead of people trooping around him.
But even as retired from active politics, the former head of state continued to play a key role in the politics of the country, albeit indirectly. His Kabarak home played a host to a select group of politicians seeking to ride on his influence in their quest for political power. Some of the key political figures who visited the home include President Uhuru Kenyatta, his mother Mama Ngina Kenyatta, opposition leader Raila Odinga, former Vice President Kalonzo Musyoka, and former Nakuru Governor Kinuthia Mbugua. Others are Central Organization of Trade Union Secretary General Francis Atwoli, among others. But similar attempts by Deputy President William Ruto bore no fruit. And as is the trend, the meetings usually had one striking semblance. Baringo Senator Gideon Moi would usher in visitors. Pictures taken then quickly circulated online, with Kenyans left to speculate. And in a country where political alignments are the key to power, some observers contended that Kabarak was slowly turning out to be the stage where the future of Kenya's next president was being shaped. This adding to the fact that Moi was believed to have played a role in the grooming of most Kenyan politicians, including President Kenyatta.
I would possibly agree that it is not my initiative, because as I've been a team player and I've always been ready to work with anybody who has the interests both of our party and of the country at heart. And from that perspective, I think I was prepared to play, as I've said many, many times in the past, any role that I would be offered, either by my party or by Kenyans.
Moi joined politics in 1955 when he was elected as a member of the Legislative Council and was considered to be a factor that would shape the 2022 presidential contest, especially in the Rift Valley region. Some argued that under President Moi, Parliament did not solve problems. Instead of being a tool of liberation, it was an instrument of dictatorship. Silas Apollo, NTV.
All right, so rightly said there, he left power, but power never left him. And he was the epicenter of what we now know as succession politics.
Correct.
And politicians, dignitaries,
Correct.
going to see him in his Kabarak home, of course, seeking opinion, his advice on a lot of things. How would you describe this?
You know, Zainab, this is actually a very funny thing because most of the politicians that we have today passed through the hands of Moi.
The professor of politics.
The professor
as they call
of
him.
politics.
Right.
And it was Andrew Morton, if I'm not wrong, who, when writing his biography, said Moi was like a giraffe. You know, he would see almost everything. I think he compared the late president to a giraffe who would see, you know, he sits from far but sees a lot. So Moi indeed was a professor of politics. And many politicians today, including our current president,
Right.
our current deputy president, former prime minister, Musalia Mudavadi, Kalonzo Musyoka, you name them, they passed through the hands of President Moi. So the truth of the matter is, apart from what we saw in 2002, the situation that played, and everybody, you know, people sang Yote Awezekana, even as he departed from the reins of power back then, his influence never left him. And that is why, I mean, everybody and their anchor have been flocking to Kabarak when they need advice.
All right.
When sometimes things they can't see a way forward in their political careers, they would visit Moi. And I'm assuming he did have answers.
Let me ask you this, Gabriel. The deputy president, as mentioned in the report,
Right.
was not able to meet
Right.
the late
Yes.
retired president. And this was, I think, numerous attempts.
Yes.
What does this mean for his political
No. I
career?
think more than anything, I think politics was played in and out. First of all, I don't think it's the president who would not want to see. So I wouldn't believe, or I would hate to believe that the late President Moi would be told that, you know, Deputy President William Ruto would like to see you, and he would say no. I don't think that was it. So there was politics that was played around who came to see the president. And I know I've heard and we've read, I think some of these things we are getting them from the newspapers, that there are times that the deputy president wanted to see him, but he could not. He was not able to see him because
Would
of
this be a
various
deterrent to
things
his
also.
political career and, of
Could-
course, the succession as president?
Could have been really, and that's why I'm saying there are politics probably that played during that time. Why anybody would, you know, close that door from anybody wanting to see the head of state? I know he was ailing, and this is something we've learned through and through, and so his time with people was quite limited, and really, to be honest, was quite administered, and it's the right thing to do when somebody is ailing. You know, they need their rest time, they need time to recoup, and what have you. So that one we cannot really beat the individuals or those that were given the mandate to get to know who was to come and see him or who was to, you know, they had all the rights to do what they did. My only hope and concern was at some point politics, you know, started playing in, and politics started coming in. But more than that, I don't think this is something we need to remember the late president with. Anything that was out of his control should not actually be pegged on him. I think he leaves us as a very astute politician. And as you've rightly put it, Moi indeed was a professor of politics.
Right.
I know so many people will talk about him. We will continue talking about him. Books have been written about the late President Moi, and I think his legacy today, what probably should be encompassed, and we start talking about it, and we start, the nyayos that we should follow are those of his philosophy. Because like I started out by telling you, Zainab, the same thing that Moi was talking about, peace, love, and unity, are the same things that we are searching for today.
And the Building Bridges initiative.
Yes, they are the very same things that we are searching today.
Right. Gabriel,
so, like as Andrew Morton put it, like a giraffe, Moi is so very far.
Right.
Could he have seen our future?
That
The
is
way we are struggling with peace, the way we are struggling to love one another and our country, the way we are struggling to be united. Could he have seen and known that these were the attributes that would have kept Kenya together? Is it what he fought for, even at the price of our economy?
Right.
I think those are some of the things that we need to, keep talking about until a solution is found.
Right, indeed, Gabriel. And of course, there is so much we can be able to cover about the late President Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi, from his social life. Of course, his children have not barely touched the surface when it comes to the legacy he's left behind. Let's just now come to a close, but very quickly, Gabriel. Either 103, 102, or 95 years in 10 seconds.
I will actually go with what Linjiru says. Linjiru, we have to give it to him. He was the closest confidant of the late President Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi.
Right.
I would entirely believe with what he says.
Right.
If the president, the late president, was telling him, don't go with my ID, I would entirely believe him.
Right.
Because this is somebody who was the closest confidant.
Right.
So we must give it to him. We must respect him for that.
Right.
So is it 105? Is it 103?
Right.
The truth remains.
Right.
President Moi lived.
All right, and he lived a very healthy life indeed. And of course, there is so much more we can still talk about him. And of course, the special coverage does not end